Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. First, I want to talk specifically to all the people in the back. I can see you. Come closer. We're very nice people. No biting, no fighting. You're safe. Come closer. So today we have a very special opportunity to speak with two founders who were right on the pioneering edge of using technologies in order to do some really amazing work with the natural world. So I'm a biologist by training. This is what I absolutely love to see, biology as technology, but also biology and technology. So I'm going to start off by asking our founders to tell you their stories, and then we'll just have a bit of a conversation to see what lessons can we learn about building on these types of innovations. So Sebastian, why don't you start us off?
I'm actually a scientist. I come from the scientific world. I have a PhD on math, and my first steps was in the academy. But then I realized that in order to effectively affect people's life and improve people's life, I had to have many new capabilities that I didn't have. So I had to search it outside and learn new things. And then we start building companies based on mostly on AI, but with focus on healthcare, sustainability, and so on. So we have already a vast experience, and now we are also helping new entrepreneurs to develop their ideas.
Wonderful, thank you. Did you notice that Sebastian almost started by apologizing that he's a scientist? It's okay, you're safe here. Matt, your turn, tell us your story.
I had a very unconventional background in that I got into the world of biology and genetic medicine from computer science. And I had written code since I was a kid and done some startups in that, and got into cybersecurity along the way, and really had been lured into the world of biology by this idea that the essence of life is information. And if you can manipulate that, you can do anything. And early on, I got kind of interested in the idea of immune memory. Like, how's your immune system remember a vaccine? And as a computer scientist in me was wondering, well, where's that file? Where's the hard drive? What language is immune memory encoded in anyway? And initially, this desire to use cryptographic hardware, password crackers, to try to wage a war against a virus with silicon instead of flesh and blood. And you have a virus is basically a computer program that can plug itself in. And it'd be great to fight that battle with silicon instead of souls. And as made this journey, some snarky scientists had pointed out that cells don't have USB ports and you can't program them. And that seemed really absurd, actually. That like how is it that we see that we want to mess with DNA ever since we knew what the double helix looked like? How is that there's no tools to do this? And so it led us to start trying to build an app store for the human body. So instead of making a drug and injecting it, we could change your DNA and you'd make things inside of yourself. And this kind of eventually led down the path to longevity. And instead of going after infectious diseases or rare diseases, go after the one thing that affects us all. Like, can you manipulate information in life to the point that you can either improve health span or reduce suffering? And that's where we are today.
Amazing. So I think what you heard from both of our founders is that neither one of them started off with expertise in the area that they're working in now. Sebastian, could you talk to us some more about how folks from different backgrounds can work together to solve big problems?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because actually, I think that the background in math is more or less related with AI. So I've been doing research and developing tools from almost 15 years now. So even before everyone was speaking about AI, because we were working on new architectures or neural networks and so on. But when you want to face and solve a hard problem, for sure you'll need different expertise. For instance, one of our companies is solving problems that comes from the relationship that we have with our seas. Every action or every human activity on the sea, it's very, very, very hard for the environment. And therefore, I need not only to understand the AI and the opportunities, I also have to understand how mammals live underneath the sea, how companies that has operation on the seas has this actual operation and try to add value to all the chain. And that needs a lot of collaboration. It's not only with the people that already have your expertise, but also with people that it's very in love with the application and it's very in love to fund new business models and so on. So it's for us, it's the core of what we do. It's just join people with different capabilities and then try to together do just adding the best of us to the equation.
Matt, I'm going to ask you if you have anything to add to this question, but first I want to look to the audience. Show of hands, how many of you are working today in a field that you did not originally train for? All right, look around. It's most of you. So great, this story should resonate. Matt, what else would you like us to know?
Yeah, I would actually go even a step further and say that the greatest innovations happen when disciplines meet. It's not just something that you can do, it's something that you almost have to do. There's a trade-off, particularly in the world of deep science and deep domain expertise, where if you take the time to master it, you almost get brainwashed to a certain extent. Like you're told who the gods are, what's right, what's wrong, how things are done. And someone coming from a different perspective can often show things that you never would have thought of. And I think that it's really essential if you want to build innovative teams in the hard sciences in particular to have this. And I think it's probably equally applicable to general business as well. But this is I highly encourage people to go outside of their box, their domain expertise. And it is hard. You have to put in the time to learn this new stuff. But it drives a huge amount of value.
And I think we hear a lot about diversity these days as almost a buzzword that we hear about. But what we really see is that diversity of perspectives, diversity of experience, diversity of expertise, that's the fuel of innovation. The same way that diversity in biology is the fuel for evolution, right? So by increasing the number of perspectives that you can access, it's not really optional anymore. Deep tech is too complicated for any one individual or set of domain experts in a single domain, I think, to really be able to tackle. Does that sound, do you agree? Right, so we just said that it's unlikely that any single person will have all the domain expertise they'll need to tackle a big problem. But let's also talk for a minute about the life cycle of going from a scientific problem in the lab to an engineering problem where you're really figuring out how to scale it to a business problem. Sebastian, do you find that scientists really know what they're doing in the business world to start out?
Actually, there is a huge bridge between science and technology. What I see all the time, because I think that everything is about management, and scientific projects are managed so different from startups or companies. So what I see all the time in the scientific world is that you want to do technology, you want to build a company based on your scientific research. You don't know how, but you want to do it yourself. And for me, that's one of the biggest problems that academy has, because if we create an environment in which we are much more closer from people with the spirit for entrepreneurship, it will be much easier to bring the results of the academy to the real world. And the other thing is that, on the other hand, I see all the time entrepreneurs that are just, it's not a bad thing, but they are almost, and now it's more than ever regarding to generative models and AI, they are integrators of the solution that already exists. And sometimes building a true breakthrough requires research. So even for entrepreneurs, it's better to have this relation with the scientific world. And for scientists, it's also a very, very, it will be very, very good to have this relation with the startup community. So I think that we have to work on this because for me it's fundamental, and it's, again, the base of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Silicon Valley, so Berkeley, Stanford, MIT, they all have these programs to take people with science backgrounds and basically put them through business boot camp, just trying to give them the skills to keep the ball rolling and bringing their innovation out into the world. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, it's funny, like if you go into a computer science department and you say, who wants to be a PhD in computer science? Like, they're like, what? They're working on their startup while you're talking.
Show of hands, how many people in here have a PhD in computer science? Yes, thank you, lady. You're safe with us. Excellent. Friends in the back. Go on.
Yeah, it's a rarity in that field. But on the other hand, if you go into molecular cell biology, PhD program or bioengineering, and you say, who wants to get into a startup? And there's been almost an open hostility towards this in academia for a while. That's like selling out. Like you're not pursuing pure science. Like you're not getting tenure in your own lab. You're making money. And I think that that's terrible, really, and something I work to fight a lot in my free time. But I think that my passion, I guess if you were to distill it, is I love to take things out of the lab and into the real world. I think that's what's really fun. It's what fires me up. I like this early kind of creation stage. And I think that a lot of the hard problems in the world have actually been solved, but the answer is trapped between the ears of a scientist in a lab. And it doesn't have a good way out. And Sebastian's point's totally right. Academic founders are very questionable. Like I know some very good ones. I wouldn't say but it's rare. And so getting this mix is very important. And I mean, when I started my first biotech, it was based largely on the work of a Nobel laureate at Caltech. And I managed to walk into his office, get worldwide exclusive rights to this technology for really good terms, with effectively no background in the space. And it's pretty odd if you think about it. And the only reason I was able to pull that off was that there's effectively no competition. No one else wanted it. It was viewed as like a research toy, and I had an idea to apply it as a therapy. And so this, there is a tremendous demand for this. Like I highly encourage anyone to go do this. It should not be, this should be business as usual for startups. They should be like integrating with these very technical disciplines. And I mean, to the point of how to bridge them, I found that although a lot of academics can be very possessive about their technology, most of them do want to see something good come from it. Like you spend your life building something, you don't want it to be just trapped in a paper. And the cycle of like, get grant, publish paper, get next grant is not super good for the world in general. And it serves a certain purpose in academia. But this ability to say, hey, I can take this thing you've been working on and I can use it to help people. And I want you to be involved. And I want you to be like, scientific lead on this, for example. But you're not going to run it. Like you're going to be in your lab because we still want to use your lab and your academic credentials and all these things. And I think that piece is missing. And like when I started the first biotech, not really understanding a lot about how biotech was done or how molecular biology is done, I started reading all the protocols for all the assays they run. I put my little office cube in the middle of the laboratory, and I sat there with the scientists and watched them. And I think I made them nervous at first. But I was like, here, because I need to know what's hard and what's easy and what's going wrong that you don't sweep things under the rug. I want to see every bad data. I want to see it.
So I'm curious for each of you. You mentioned there was no competition. We're talking about big, messy problems that you've both worked on. What is something that investors were concerned about when you went to try to find investment?
For us, I think it's, what I would say is that I want to tell just a small story. When I have this scientific friend which has a great idea. He was applying for a fund of, I think, $25,000 in order to develop his research. It was a small fund. He didn't earn the fund, so he didn't do it. And I was shocked because I say, if you are going to change the world, just put your money yourself. It has to be done. So, what I found is that not everything is venture capital, so you have to find ways to have the resources that enables what you want to do. And sometimes what I found, I don't know if you know, but in Chile there are a lot of public grants given by the state, which don't ask you for equity or anything else. So there you have a first platform to build. And the other thing is that you have almost all the time a lot of pressure to generate the revenue, which I found it's really important in order to build something that is sustainable as a company. But when you are doing research in order to build your product, sometimes you have to spend a lot of money before having revenue. So there you have to take some risk, I think. So it's what has been work for us, because we have too many shut doors in our faces when we were trying to raise money without having any income.
This is also a problem whenever we're talking about exponential anything, is that at the beginning, you've got this really flat part of the curve where it looks like nothing is happening. And you have to have that exponential mindset in order to get to the part of the curve where it starts to bend. Yeah. And that costs money, a lot of money in bio. Matt, what do you want to add?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to be pretty scrappy. Like, in some respects, we're like opposite sides of the same coin. And like, come from a good school, the PhD, you have this like idea, and I want to like figure out how to do business for it, take it out. And I had none of those things, right? So I have this idea, and I want to like take the science and put it in. And when we started, I mean, by far the most common objection was, "You're crazy, that won't work." Like there were no approved gene or cell therapies. It was just like out of the question. And furthermore, that I had no business doing it. And you have to be pretty scrappy. Like I initially, I was maxing out my credit cards on lab supplies. Amusingly enough, I had bartered to get some bench space at a lab in exchange for letting them play with a virus. I had a prototype, so I did like a postdoctoral fellowship without, the doctorate degree. And eventually, I got my own lab. And at some point, you really cross like an invisible line where, instead of saying you have no business here, it's just like, oh, must be Dr. Scholz with his latest work. And it was really odd, actually. Like at some point, and I was like, no, I'm still the same guy I was, right there. And but you cross this line in perception. And now I think, the challenge is that, of course, we're doing things that are really ambitious. And there's not a lot of investors who really want to do ambitious things. They pay lip service to it a lot, but there's very few who write the checks on it. And I think in the case of Immusoft, the first company I'd started, we got a space in Breakout Labs, one of Peter Thiel's foundation, and a couple of these Founders Fund led the Series A for that. And these tech guys who had taken a step into it, and they got this information and life thing. And at some point, like now, there's thousands of gene therapies in clinical trials. Like there's a couple dozen, I think, approved. Like it's the whole world changed around us. But if you don't set the course on the flat part, it can be hard to ride the exponential part. I think that you build all this momentum and expertise in the relative obscurity, and then ideally take advantage of it when it takes off.
You've both brought up an interesting point that I think we should pull on just for a moment when we're thinking about ambition. And that's because you are both serial problem solvers. So Sebastian, talk to us about the importance of the foundations or a platform approach that empowers you to solve multiple problems that might seem not obviously connected.
What I think is that maybe that's an invitation for founders and funds. What I think is that the startup ecosystem, and it's called, and it's maybe the only chance that we have to face and solve the real hard problems that we are facing now. So I think it's almost like a duty, because this won't come from the scientific world. This won't come either, many in some particular cases, but most of the time won't come from bigger companies. So it's for us that we are called to solve these problems. So I think that we have to be, and we are forced to be brave, both the founders and the funds. But also we have to build good relationships and trust. So it's really important that even if we are brave, we are responsible of what we are doing, and we focus on have really bounded expectations about what we're going to get as a result. What I found is related to that is that you have to be brave, and you have for sure to have a good team. That's the basis. You have, in order to be able to solve different problems, you have to add all these different views, but in order to make something synergic that works better than the views of the people only by themselves. And you have to build this environment in your company that allows you and motivates people to be brave, because it's very hard when you are risking to lose your job. You don't take any risks. So we need, I think, to build this spirit of bravery in all the founders and founds and inside companies.
Beautiful. Matt, what would you say?
So I don't have a ton to add to this, although I think having a kind of hacker mentality really led to maybe the outcome of this. Like, I was the first person to want to take something apart, to break it, put it back together again. But when you start finding the hard problems, I think the team becomes very important. And certainly from my perspective, like, everyone on my team, is way better at what they do than I am. Like, that's why they're there. And you do not want to cut corners on that. And for my purposes, I'm always usually working with small teams, like little groups that are dedicated on this thing. When I started the first time, I said, well, I want to be the undisputed world expert in this technology, nothing else. Like, I don't care who we're in the room with, like what their expertise or credentials are. Like, we are going to know more than they will. Like, we will build this ourselves and be the experts. And anything that is not in this core thing, we're going to, outsource basically to someone else. But people, like, I think, react very well to vision like this. Like, you can get people to follow you, like, barefoot into hell if you have a good purpose. Like, they like, people want to do that. They want their life to have purpose. They want to see these things happen. And if you can say, this is the vision, this is where we're going, I think that's how you pull those pieces together. And once you get good at solving one hard problem, you probably want to solve another one.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring the conversation a little bit closer to home, to the LATAM region, in just a second. But before I do, quick lightning round, gentlemen. In a tweet-length answer, if you could go back in time 5 years ago and tell 5 years ago you the most important thing that you wish you had known, what would it be?
Please.
You only get one.
Just say, get a helmet, you're going to take a beating.
Get a helmet, you're going to take a beating. Okay, great.
I think it's we're trying. Sometimes I am a little bit frustrated because it takes some time to make our solutions to be available for everyone, and sometimes this is because we face difficult problems, but we don't truly understand what it takes to build a good solution. So what I would say is that try to build more MVPs and learn everything that you can from this fast created MVP. Because at the beginning, we were building these huge AI solutions that took a lot of time, and then just to learn that we should have done differently. Yeah.
Yeah, so we just heard their notes to their past selves. I want to invite you all today, when you leave this event, write some notes for your future self, right? Because you've done lots of learning over the last few days, and you're going to want to come back to that. Set a calendar invite for 5 years from now to go over your notes from this event and see what you come up with from your notes from your past self. Okay, let's pivot now and bring it to the LATAM region. So you've both told me some really exciting affordances that innovators and markets have here in Latin America. Let's pull on that a little bit. So Sebastian, what do you see as a big affordance of this region?
I think that we have been talking, I think that here in Guatemala and in particular here in the Volcano Summit, we have felt which are the opportunities that we have. We have a lot of talent, and even if we may be a little bit short on capital, we still manage to do amazing things. Something that I missed from previous conversation is that in Latin America, we have this huge or beautiful nature that serves as a huge lab to build solutions that help us to be more responsible with the environment. For sure, we faced some challenges when we tried to build sustainable or startup focused on sustainability that needs to be profitable, but it can be done. So I would think it's this. We have this huge potential that we are not necessarily using it. We have a lot of shore, in particular in Chile. We have more than 4,000 kilometers of shore that has helped us to build great products for the industry that is working on the seas. And here, even in Guatemala, you have all this natural landscape with trees and everything that it's very important to preserve life on Earth. So if we arrive to build this model that helps sustainability but are profitable, I think that we have a huge laboratory that you won't have anything else, everything in any part of the world. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, thinking about sustainability through the lens of literally protecting your natural capital is such an important mindset. So thank you for pointing that out. Matt, how about you? What do you notice about Latin America?
Well, I totally agree with that point. I think they need to have more adventure travel companies down here. Actually, every time I come to Guatemala, I want to stay another couple of weeks, and it just seems so underutilized, actually, to so much natural beauty. But what struck me about the entrepreneurial community in Latin America, I think more generally, is that it has a very unique character to itself. It's not the same as the United States. It's definitely not the same as Europe. You have like a lot of kind of I think aggressive, ambitious entrepreneurs. You have a certain regulatory flexibility in that the rules are dispersed and inconsistent and maybe not quite as strict as they are in some respects in North America or Europe. And I think that's a really nice cocktail for innovation. And I think historically, there's been a shortage of capital in it, and I think that's a real limitation. And I should say, of course, we have investors from Latin America here in Variantes who, despite my talking about investors who don't take risks, we're writing early checks in these bold ideas. And I think over the last decade, there's been a real kind of like proliferation of investment, and I think that should continue. And my expectation is that you'll see, this area find its niche and what it's better at than anyone. And we've kicked this around actually at UFM a few years ago about how do you design curriculum, in this case for the medical school, that would succeed in retaining the best and the brightest and competing on a global stage with the infrastructure and resources that are available. And this at the time, we're thinking of things like bioinformatics or medical devices, things that you do very, very well in Latin America and then export to the world. And I think as the fintech really caught my eye down here, and mostly I just saw a ton of it and got to really thinking that if you're liberated from the US's financial regulations, there's actually a ton of opportunity that I hadn't really given much thought to. And I can't imagine these things actually starting in the US with the ideas. You have this wonderful incubator where they can try and fail and find the ones that work and go from there.
Wonderful. So we're coming close to the end of our time together. So first, what I'm going to do is steal a question from one of my favorite podcasts. We're back to the lightning round, gentlemen. So we're going to go for our short, juicy sound bites. Sebastian, if everything goes well, in 5 years, what problem will you be trying to solve?
What I found from being working on AI for so long, it's that AI, it's a really, really good tool to have or to develop a better understanding of complex situations. So on one hand, I will for sure solving much more problems on the ocean. And in the other side of the spectrum, I will be also, I'm working on some research on other technological breakthroughs, which are not only AI. So I may be working in something new related to other kind of new technologies that are emerging right now.
Wonderful. Matt.
I think I'll still be pulling on this thread of information in life and trying to manipulate it to improve health and longevity. And I mean, my goal kind of longer term is to build a big pharma focused on this, to be like, Pfizer for longevity. And I really think that to tackle a problem as monumental as aging, you need far more resources than you can really raise by other means. Like, it's hard to rival making $100 billion a year. Like, that's a staggering amount of resources to bring to bear on a problem. And so I want to continue down that path.
Well, this sounds like a really exciting future that I know I'm excited to see you move into. Would you all please help me thank our panelists, and thank you for joining us today.